Welcome to Reflections, the podcast that biblically encourages, equips, and empowers women for apostolic life and service. Here's your host, Dr. Cindy Miller.
Welcome to Let's Talk. This is a place where we have fun, honest conversations with friends about faith and values, our real life, and what it looks like to follow God in everyday life. So whether you're heavily involved in the church or you're brand new to your faith, whether you work a regular job or you're home raising your family, whether married, single, old, or young, you belong here. Thank you for joining us today. Our guest today is someone that I am privileged to call friend. She is a leader in our denomination, and she's making a huge impact in her professional world. And her name is Walea. I am so happy she's here. Let me just tell you a little bit about her, and then I'll have her speak a little bit about her life. Tennille and her husband Tyler serve as pastors of First Church in Pearland, Texas, where they live with their 3 children, Paisley, Loren, and York. Tennille serves as Simon's Vice President of Federal Aerospace and Defense, where she enables the warfighter to make a more secure nation. Thank you for that. She previously served as Director of Innovative Technology for the federal government at Microsoft, where she helped integrate artificial intelligence and quantum computing into federal agencies. As an international speaker, leadership consultant, and technology expert, she helps the government navigate technological advancements. She also worked as IBM's Chief Technology Officer for Global Governments, where she also focused on artificial intelligence and quantum computing. With a strong background in team building and technology leadership, she is passionate about helping teams develop a healthy culture and adopt cutting-edge leadership and technology strategies. She loves mentoring and helping young women find their place in STEM-driven industries. Tennille, thank you so much for making time to be with us today. Please, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners? Not the Tennille of the bio that I just read, which is very impressive, but what are some things you would like our listeners to know about you?
Thank you so much for letting me be here. It is such an honor. Oh, what to say about me? Most importantly, I
Other
am
than you're super fun, you're like so much fun to be with.
I am super fun. Thank you for knowing that. I'm very rarely serious, which does make for a very difficult conversation at work sometimes. So, um, m- my husband and I pastor in Pearland, and it's a spectacular group of people that we get to lead. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to do that. And our wonderful children, Paisley is 13, and I think she's 25. Ren is 11, and she is the most delightful, weird person. She just lives in her own little world, and it's just wonderful. And then Org, our 5-year-old little boy, runs our house. And I learned that quickly that he's going to run the house and everybody obeys him, for better or worse. And it's a wonderful life we live, and so thankful to get to do all of the things that we're so blessed to do. We travel together, we have adventures together, we cook together a lot. We cook a lot. My husband's from Louisiana, so the cooking just kind of comes natural if you're from Louisiana. So we cook a lot. We love traveling together and exploring together and going to museums and Broadway theaters and just very much enjoying the season we're in with young kids and watching them grow. And it's the best part of life. First Church is our calling, and we absolutely are so thankful for First Church and the people in it. And then, yes, I work a job, which is the intro you just gave. So I won't talk about that. But it's also very fun. Yeah. That's mostly I'm just fun, and sort of have serious conversations is actually a little bit of a stretch, but we're going to try.
We're going to give it our best shot today. What's amazing to me is that you're saying your daughter is 13, and I think that's probably around the time I first started. You were about 13 when I first started getting to know you and within your family context. So, wow. I'm glad I'm not aging rapidly right before my own eyes right now. So you have, like, this incredibly busy life that sounds like you're trying to maintain that balance of family life, you're tending to your marriage and your family. I know how important your children are to you because we rescheduled this podcast recording because we had a Christmas party at school that was taking priority, and I was like, "Absolutely, we have our priorities in the right place." Yes. Yes, we make time for the kids.
Yes, it
Uh,
was, I'm sure somewhere in the emails that I've gotten an email about this, but I get so many emails from their schools that I miss the time of it, and it's like, "Oh my goodness, you've gotta be kidding." So, thank you for allowing me grace of
oh,
attending
no,
this party.
we yeah, we've been working like 3 months trying to get our schedules matched
Yeah,
up, and
that's true.
finally so here we are, we are determined, today's the day. But, Tanil, when we think about and this is me, along with 100,000 other women, one of the things that we feel like is the first thing to go in the busyness of life, because most of us are all heavily engaged in ministry, involved in our churches, loving our families, and having work lives, career balance with that. So, what do you say? Share with us what are some practices that you feel like spiritually keep you grounded in the busy times and the demands of life?
Yeah. So, I the balance is I I think that's the most question I ever get. I think it's what the all struggle with, right? No matter what you do, you're always trying to find the balance in your life. And I equate it to juggling. And so I don't think you ever actually find balance. I think you prioritize the ball that's falling at that moment. And so what I've done in life and what I try to do, and I mean, admittedly, I fail 1,000 times, but what I try to do is deal with what's going on right then. So in the mornings when I wake up, Tyler and I have coffee at about 5:45. That's our quiet prayer time, focus time before we wake the 3 kids up. And once we wake them up, it's breakfast, it's court press to get them ready to school. And so we get them ready, and Tyler takes them to school. And so I throw that ball up in the air. And then the next ball to fall is I have to get dressed. And so I get me ready, and then I throw that ball up in the air. And then I come up to the church every day and to work. And so even though I work secularly, I come up to my church office and work from here. And so, I come in, I talk to all the staff. We have kind of a mind meld in the morning, and I throw that ball up in the air. Well, then life, the paycheck work comes in, right? So then I deal with those, and then I throw that up in the air, and all the while trying to make sure that you realize that some of those balls are rubber, meaning if it drops, it's gonna bounce back and it's gonna be fine. So if I miss one church staff meeting, it's gonna be fine. We're gonna have another one next week. That's a rubber ball. If I miss somebody's 24th birthday party after a Wednesday night church service, you know what? They're gonna turn 25 next year, and I'll go celebrate them next year. That's a rubber ball. But
Right.
then there's some of them that are crystal, right? So my family, my relationship with God, those things, if they drop, they don't bounce back, they break. And so knowing when to juggle what, and knowing that if I ever lose my relationship with God and that won't drops and shatters, then my whole life is off course. If I drop my marriage, then my whole life is off course. And if I drop my kids, that's you only get one shot. And so knowing the difference and the weighted balls of this is rubber, it's going to bounce back. I may not be able to be present at this, but my kid needs me, so I'm going to do this. And it's kind of learning to realize that there's no such thing as balance, but making sure the last balls of relationships with God, with your family, with your spouse, those are the ones that you have to prioritize in every situation. And I think we've gotten that wrong a lot of times, right?
Oh,
Um,
it's so
I
easy to
think
do because we're just trying to survive most days.
right, right, and a church situation's on fire, and you think, "Oh goodness, I can't go do this with my kids. I've got to put out this fire." And sometimes, yeah, there that happens. But how many times have we walked out of rooms with our family to go focus on what's important, realizing that we're leaving the most important thing sitting at the table, and our relationship with God is the first thing that if that's not right and that's not aligned, then you miss the whole point of life. And so we're very adamant about our morning times, focusing on prayer, focusing on setting our hearts right that day and getting strength for that day. And that's when we've learned to do it. Now I'm also a night owl, so problem too.
So
I
that
don't get it
helps.
right.
You're
But
you're not
that's when I
empty
do it.
every night? Excellent. Well, I want to just keep moving. So you talked about you go to church, you work in your office, your secular job and your church leadership role are housed in one office. It sounds like, and that sounds very convenient. It's wonderful. But so let's talk about before you became the professional woman you are today. You grew up a pastor's kid. You grew up doing church and being in church. So let's talk a little bit about how church uh, shaped your life, how leadership has informed the leader you are today, and how did you wind up taking the path that you are on? I mean, was it kind of like, oh, I always wanted to do this job, or was it, oh, that's not what apostolic girls do? You need to think differently. So, kind of, could you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, you talked about when we met, and I decided that when I met you, you were the person that I wanted to be like. And so I went and got my bachelor's in psychology, and I was doing my master's in marriage and family therapy when I quickly realized this is not for me. And I got about halfway through it, Sister Miller. I got about halfway through it and realized I carry things too deeply. And being a pastor's wife and already having the weight of carrying people, right?
Right.
Uh, to have a secular career doing that and a church career doing that. And so I have always worked outside the church. I think a lot of people see that as probably going against the grain or different. But my mom is a general contractor. My so my grandmother worked at a chemical plant while my granddad pastored. My mom is a contractor while my dad pastored. So for me to have a secular job is kind of almost my normal, right? So
Right.
after I got out of college, I worked for a fashion designer for a while, and then I worked in schools, tutoring physics and chemistry, and then I joined the South Texas district. I worked as the administrative assistant. And so even that role wasn't working in the church. So
Mhm.
I've kind of always worked outside the church. But when I started, my first role was at IBM. And I remember starting, and a pastor's wife at General Conference came up to me and said, "Tennille, I didn't realize First Church was doing so bad that you had to go get a job. I'm so sorry." And I remember thinking, I can't believe that you just said that. Um, so to set the level straight, I could work for the church, but
Right.
I don't have, I'm not musical. And even if I was, I don't want to be the main worship leader. I don't want to be the main, there's so many other talented people that that's their gifting and calling. And I don't, what am I going to add to that? And then, other than doing that at church, I mean, what else would I be paid to do, And so I, I've always been kind of outside of the church world, meaning I went to public schools, I went to public universities, I've worked in public jobs. And as far as how I got here, it was a decision to walk through the doors got opened for me. So one of our pastors, Jonathan Arnaud, called me right at the end of my dad's tenure as superintendent the first time and said, I feel like God has told me to offer you a job. And I thought, no, that is definitely not the voice of God. But I used to do all of the screens and the tech behind Youth Congress a decade ago. And he had seen my work on computers and said, one day I'm going to hire you. And I thought, this guy. Well, the week that my job for the district was going to be ending, I got that call from him and I still didn't hear it as the voice of God. And he kept calling and saying, no, I'm telling you, God told me to hire you. And I'm saying, no, he did not tell you that. And so I interviewed for the job and I still didn't feel peace about it. And we did a giving service at church, and Tyler, my husband, wrote a check out for every dollar in our bank account. And I just said, babe, we don't have money to buy food next week. And he said, God told me to do it and I'm going to do it. I said, all right. And so I interviewed for the job, and the next week he gave me an offer, and to the penny, I made monthly what that check was that Tyler wrote. And that was the moment that I realized this is God. And so I joined IBM and worked with artificial intelligence, which is a whole other conversation that if we want to go down that rabbit hole, we can. But watched God open doors and realized that there's a lot of hurting people out there that don't know God the way we do. And because I'm in the workforce, they're going to know the God we serve.
Right.
And that's why I feel like I'm here. It's not because our church couldn't afford to pay me. It's not because we're struggling and I needed to go out and find a job to make sure our kids are fed. But what it does allow us to do is it allows us to take less from this church and put more back into giving to missions, to giving to others, to hiring other staff that are much more capable of doing the things that I would be doing. And so I get to work secularly and have the benefits of a secular career and be able to bless this church in the process and reach people that I would never get to reach, and it's a calling. It's become my calling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's kind of like where we are. So that question of how does your church life inform your career? And I think it really does come down to that sense of I'm living out my calling, you
Yeah.
know? So I want to get into something that maybe uh might take up a little bit more time, but let's just go for it.
Okay.
So help us. So there's most of us are outside of your field, most of the listeners, and you're going to talk about things that we may not be, fully uh, aware of on your level. So help us understand what kind of work you're leading right now and why it matters. Why has God placed you, other than being light to those that are seeking light? What is the work you're doing, and why do you feel like it matters kingdom wise as a
Mm,
mission?
Yeah. So thank you for asking this question. What I've done for the last decade is artificial intelligence. And I think there's a great unknown around it and a lot of fear around it. And there's a whole lot of conversations that are not being had that should be being had. And what I mean by that is AI is going to change everyone's lives. It already is. It is displacing jobs. It is changing the way we work. It is changing the way we learn, and it's changing the way we live. And there is a great unknown. And I'm going to say the word ignorance, and I mean it in the very literal definition of the word. There is an ignorance about it. And it's not I'm not being derogatory. It's an unknown. People don't know. And what I see happening is I see a lot of our church people just instantly saying no to that. We don't want that. When ironically, everybody's been using AI for a decade at least, with phones, with email, with predictive texting on your phone, with email sorting, with marketing, what you're getting marketed. And so I think because ChatGPT is now a user thing that people can actually engage with, now people have opinions about it. And what I feel like God has allowed me to be in the room when it's shaping messaging around how it's supposed to be used, how it's going to be used, and how America should use it. And the conversations I have, candidly, they're really weird. Like, I think people just think I'm weird, and so I've kind of stopped talking about it because I think, I've gotten called everything from crazy to the Antichrist when I talk about it. It's like, you know what? I don't need any more judgment in my life for people that don't understand. So I just have stopped talking about it. But bottom line is it's going to greatly affect churches. I see these apps that are a digital Jesus that you can talk to Jesus, and it's an AI you're talking to. And what bothers me the most is when I look at all of these things, I realize the people that are training the artificial intelligences don't believe the way we believe.
Right.
And you are allowing your thinking to be outsourced to people who don't believe the way you do. And so the Talk to Jesus app, it was horribly, horribly misguided. And I look at what it's doing to the job market for our kids. I look at what it's doing to saints in our church who are losing jobs to it. And I look at, how do we inform college students? How do we inform pastors? How do we inform pastors' wives? How do we have leadership conversations and say, this is something we should be talking about on the deepest level because it will touch every part of our life. And so I feel like God has placed me here to know about it and to be a subject matter expert in shaping how we use it and the conversations around it. And so what I do with it day to day is I'm helping our warfighters make sure that they're most advanced, make sure the technology that they use is the best, making sure that America stays competitive in the warfare landscape. And that's what I do on a day-to-day basis, making sure fighter jets have the best AI technologies in it, making sure our nuclear submarines have the best AI mapping, the geospatial data of what they're doing. And that part of it is great because I'm actually getting to shape the narrative in the Department of War narrative. But I feel like I've got to have this conversation on our narrative as well. What is the church going to do? Like, I don't know all of this stuff for no reason. What is it? How does it apply to the church? How does it apply to how we'll lead people in the future? How do we set moral and ethical bounds around dating and artificial intelligence? And what is appropriate to do on artificial intelligence? And these conversations just are lacking. And I feel like God has placed me in the most bizarre, crazy place to just sound an alarm and say, you know what, we've got to start talking about this stuff. It's going talked about, and our kids know more about it than our parents do. And when we become mute, when the church becomes silent, the world speaks louder and the world gets to shape the narrative. And that's what's happened in a lot of science spaces, but especially in the artificial intelligence side, we're just not having the conversations. So,
what
where
do
would
you
you like me to go
recommend?
next?
What do you recommend? So when you say have these conversations for people who are completely unaware of even the questions to ask,
Right.
where do we go? How do we start having not only conversations that are important for us to speak about, but intelligent information driven conversations where we're not fear mongering and we're not trying to live outside of real life. This is here, it's here to stay. And so, what
Right.
does that mean to us as the
Right.
church?
And that's the question. So, do we have a forum as the UPC where we can have these kind of conversations? Not that I know of. Um, and then even when I do, I honestly feel like I'm almost doomsday because I'm talking realities that are very much a reality. This isn't, I'm not talking even future technologies. I can, but I'm not even talking about what's in the future. I'm talking about what's happening right now. And so with AI, we're seeing nations that don't agree with us, that would be considered our enemies, using it to close a kill chain. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means an AI entity could decide who's an enemy and take that person out without a human ever being involved in that conversation. And so when I have those conversations on the flip side, I think it kind of scares everyone so much that everybody just wants to stop it and say, this God won't let this happen. This isn't going to happen. And it's like, it's here.
Happening. It's
It's
here.
happening. And
Yeah.
so, I feel very torn on, candidly. I don't like being called the Antichrist, so I've just kind of stopped talking about it. But if we're going to have conversations about it, talking about what our saints' roles in the future are going to be, what their jobs are going to be, there's a whole lot of fear and uncertainty around what our kids' jobs are going to be. Like, for instance, if I would have told my kids 3 years ago, when you grow up, you should be a surgeon. You should, that is y- wow, you be a surgeon. Okay. Well, today I read this article about these China hospitals that you walk into a box, it assesses your health with AI, it finds out what's wrong with you, and then robotic surgeons perform the surgeries that you need, and then you walk out. No humans involved. Well, so what does that look like for people in the medical field?
Right.
Jobs are decreasing. And when you live in America, the land of opportunity that everybody is thriving on, they find identity in what they do. You're going to see a flip back to finding your identity and who you are, the kind of person you are, the God you serve. I find my identity in who He is, not what I do. And that's going to be a shift in church conversations. Pastors are going to have to walk people through that. Losing your job to a robot, losing your job to an AI. And that sounds so crazy and it sounds so surreal. And people are like, no, that's not happening. God's not going to let that happen. Well, it's here,
It's
it's
here.
happening.
And we want to be aware, so when you're saying things like that, I think that we do need to start having these conversations and move into what is this going to mean, because it's not even like 10 years from now.
I
We're
know.
talking about changes rapidly occurring all the time, and we want to, yes, be prayerful about next decisions, but I think I think one of the things that really eliminates the fear is information,
Right,
understanding what we're up against instead of saying, okay, I'm just not going to think about it because it makes me fearful.
right,
Come Lord Jesus. I think it's like, okay, somebody needs to be talking about it. We are here today. But what would you say? Like, what message do you want to send to the listeners today about, you know, maybe that mom that her kid's wanting to be on Chat GPT? I mean, as a counselor, one of the things that has troubled me is people using Chat GPT for a counseling, for having conversations for their life and counseling, and all it does is agree with you and take you down the deep
absolutely.
dark hole that you
Mhm.
can't hardly come out of. So it's just in every area of life. If we're starting to really lean into it and say, "Oh, I really love this," without information, I think we're going to wake up one day in a scary place.
Right. And you couldn't have said it better. What what I see with the AI therapies and the apps and everything is what I have watched happen is it wants to make you happy and it wants to agree with you. And so if you give it a, I mean, you've seen the horrible, horrible situations that have resulted in a suicide. The the AI wants to make you happy. And if it feels like that's what you want it to say, it's going to affirm you and it's going to agree with you. That's the nature of it. Like it's the reason, like if you ask it to cite something, it'll just create a whole APA citation for you because it wants to make you happy. So if you want that, it's going to give it to you. And it's why the state of Illinois has actually outlawed AI apps for counseling and therapy because the very nature of algorithms in AI is that it's going to try and please you. And it's why you can't trust it to walk people through the journey. But you are seeing vast numbers of young people turn to it asking for emotional support, asking for help, asking investing in it like you would in a best friend. And bottom line is the sanctity of life in the human experience is that we are the image of God, and Christianity is the only religion that does that, right? So we're the only religion that says we're in the image of God, which means we are his he loves us regardless. He loves everyone regardless of their religion. God loves them. Well, when you implement an AI tool that is only valuing it as making self happy, then you are creating a different religion. You're creating a different perspective that very much bothers me because just like the Talk to Jesus app, well, eventually it's going to learn to say what you want it to say because it wants to please you. And so I'm watching our young people get so connected with it. I'm watching how parents just allow limitless technology. And I just want to stand and say, stop. Don't let your kids do that. Turn it off. And again, I feel like I just became the person that beat up against TikTok and how dare you? This is a fun little app. No, it's not. And I try to be the voice of it, and I just feel like I can't always just. I think people just think I'm doomsday prepper instead of no, I know the technology, and so I try and balance the advice or conversations I have to things like this where you're asking me so clearly you would like to know and you would like to have this conversation. But I would tell your moms, I would tell kids, I would tell pastors, I would tell pastor's wife, I would tell district superintendents, I would tell every single leader in our movement, you have got to watch and be aware of what technology is capable of and what it is going to do in the future. We are walking into a very present reality where the AI entities on phones are smarter than humans. It is. Like we have passed human intelligence 2 years ago. There's no possible way that a human person could know what an AI knows at this point. It's far surpassed the capabilities of humanity. And so, what are we going to do with that? What do we do when you're sitting in church service and somebody's fact checking you on GPTs and you realize that you've misspoken and you're proving you wrong, or that our kids are getting counseling from something that will only affirm them and getting all of their answers from an algorithm that was not trained to believe the way we believe. And it's
Well, I
scary.
I think it's the most frightening part of it is people are handing off their brains. Like, I'm not even gonna I'm not even gonna think for myself
Yep.
anymore. I'm just gonna let this think for me, and doing it so seemingly, in my opinion, without any fear, without just kinda like, "Okay, well, it's just the next thing, so that's what we do. It's the next in thing," and, like, are you not thinking this through? And I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
I understand what you're saying in the sense of, you sound the alarm. I remember talking to parents like, be careful giving your kids phones too young and monitor and all that. And it's just kind of like, I'm
Yeah.
the bad guy in the church. But yeah, so here we are and we're worried about the future. But what are some positive things we could be doing now? Like if you could just kind of say, okay, well, we don't have control over everything and everybody's decision. We don't know what tomorrow holds, but here's some things you should be thinking about right
Right.
now.
Right. I think first of all, the thing I would, and the conversation I'm having with my kids is Jensen Wang, the NVIDIA CEO. So like he's the reason AI is powered with chips. And so he's telling young people, go be plumbers, go be air conditioner repairmen, go do things with your hands. And
Yep.
so with a 13, 11, and 5-year-old, I've been very intentional of, you know what? Put the technology down and go learn how to do something. Learn how to build, learn how to grow things, learn how to make things, learn how to create. And I think we're like God, we are creating. And so I think the what parents can do now is delay the use of technology in your kid's life as long as possible and realize that you have this moment to shape their life and who they are and what their interests are. We're the family that we go by. eh, One of our children says we want to paint. Well, we're going to go buy you all the palettes. We're going to buy you the canvas. Go paint. And
Yeah.
it's a drive to learn more, a curiosity, and that's what one of my friends is the guy that invented Wi-Fi in Google Maps. So he's admittedly a pretty smart person. And he's got, I think, 7 doctorates. And then he became a neurosurgeon because he was working on AI and he needed to learn how the brain worked. And so he went and became a neurosurgeon naturally, as you would,
Yeah.
to learn how to do
Yeah,
AI.
but
And
would.
so he's one of the most brilliant people ever. At 11, he was in the south side of France and created water cells and sold it to NASA, hydrocells that NASA uses on their spacecrafts at 11 years old. And when I listened to him talk, he said, because I asked him, I said, I can't believe you're a believer. There's not very many people in the space that I would say they're a Christian, they're a follower of Jesus Christ. And he said, why would I not be? And I just kind of looked at him and he said, have you ever looked at the universe? And I just kind of smiled and he said, it's just the eye of God. That's all the universe is. It's just the eye of God. And he said, had I, as an 11-year-old, been given a tablet, I would have never discovered what I discovered. I would have never gotten bored and learned how the well systems in France work to know how to make hydro cells for NASA. And he said, our kids are never bored. They're always entertained with technology and they've lost their curiosity. And I just felt instantly convicted. So I came home a few years ago and we took all technology out. I was like, no more tablets, no more phones,
Never.
nothing. And helped my children learn to do things with their hands, to create, to question, to think for themselves, to learn for themselves, because there comes the point where I'm working with all of these universities now that are like, what do we do with AI? Our
Mhm.
kids are they're using it and
Yeah.
then they're lying about it.
Right.
And, they're not thinking for themselves. So what do we do? Well, you're seeing all of these universities, these Ivy League schools turning to almost old classical education. Stand up and defend what you believe. Stand up and tell me why you
Exactly.
believe
Yeah.
this. And so I love that idea because I feel like we're returning to a classical stand up and tell me why you believe what you believe. Stand up
Mhm.
and defend your faith to me. And I'm not seeing that in a long time. And I really love that it's coming back to the point of this is my decisions to make. This is who I am because here's why. And the curiosity in our kids and making sure that we are encouraging curiosity, encouraging questions. Don't limit their questions. Let them ask all the questions because it's how their brains are being shaped. And what I was saying is the kids that grow up that way are going to overtake the ones that they've outsourced their thinking to an AI model. It's going to be the difference makers. And so letting our kids and our young people be the generation that says, you know what, I'm not going to depend on a computer to tell me what to think. I'm going to say, this is what God says. This is what thus save the word of God. This is who I am. This is everything in me is this. And I think it's a great opportunity for the church to stand up and be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ in a world that's outsourcing everything.
And I think bringing that curiosity and creativity, that can be in Sunday school, that can be
Yeah,
in youth hyphen. It's not limited to just, have a little hobby at home, but
right.
and that's for adults as well. Like, hey, we can do this ourselves.
Yeah.
Take a step back because I mean, have you ever gone to an event recently and everybody's in one room but they're on their phone scrolling and I'm just like, what have we come to?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I have loved this conversation, but we are quickly coming to a time constraint here. So I'm going to ask you this question. What message are you most passionate about sending to women of faith today?
To not do this without crying, goodness. Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. And I feel like we get so caught up in the world of savedness and being saved and perfecting ourselves and perfecting our lives, perfecting our holiness, perfecting our rules, perfecting our standards, right? We forget there's a lost and dying world. And there's a whole lot of people that don't know Jesus Christ yet. And it's our to reach them, but we've removed ourselves from the narrative. And I think that's why people are so shocked at what I do. I don't think it's abnormal in the secular world. I mean, women have jobs and mine happens to be in federal aerospace and defense. But I mean, women are lawyers, women are doctors, women are counselors, they're everywhere in the world. And we have completely removed ourselves from the narrative to where we look at, there's a book called More God is Crime by uh, Byron Johnston, and he talks about the moral community hypothesis. And the general premise of it is that the church has so removed themselves out of the community to be in the world but not of the world that policing is now ineffective because churches are not shaping moral formation in their communities. And I see that a lot in the apostolic church. We isolate to make sure that we are protecting ourselves, protecting our kids, protecting the next generation. And so we remove ourselves out of it and realize that when we isolate, we don't ever know the people that we're called to reach. We don't ever, like, when somebody gets up and says, invite somebody to church, and you can't name 100 people that don't know Jesus Christ, it's a problem
Yeah.
because we're pulling ourselves out in order to be the sanctified, holy church when there are people that are lost and dying and going to hell that if we would get out of our bubble and reach them, they would be in heaven because we do. And I just candidly, it keeps me up at night. It's a constant. It just deeply bothers me because I think people look at my life and question why I do what I do, and I'll tell you why I do what I do. I I was at an event in DC and I was meeting with all the government workers in the highest level of government, which is an SES worker, and I was teaching on AI tool. And one of my coworkers was going to meet me in the lobby when I got up there to kind of prep me. And I got in the lobby and I walked in and she had been crying, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she just looked at me. She goes, "Who are you?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Jennifer, what's wrong?" And she goes, "I know you." And she's weeping. And she said, "Are you Pentecostal?" And I said, "I am." And she goes, "I didn't even know y'all existed anymore." And it just bothers me. It
Right.
bothers me because I feel like we get so comfortable with being around all the same people all the time. And of course, iron sharpens iron, but at some point, you are the iron. You gotta go sharpen people. And I feel like we get so wrapped up into our worlds of making sure that we are perfected in Christ that we realize that we've forgotten to realize that there's a lost and dying world that need us in it. And what we have changes lives. And it is the answer to the world. It is the answer to the chaos. It is the answer to the drug addict. It is the answer to the CEOs. It's the answer to the federal government. But we've so isolated that our moral influence has become almost mute. And you look at conversations like abortion. Abortion's not a political issue, it's a religious issue, it's a moral issue. But the church goes silent. And so the world speaks louder, the world shapes the narrative. This is the Republican Democrat issue. No, no, it's righteousness. And if we're not ever in the world to change it, then we're losing a lot of people that don't know Jesus Christ because we've removed ourselves from the narrative. And the reason I work and the reason I'm in the job that I'm in, and the reason that if God allows me to stay in it, I will stay in it until I die, is that there's a lot of broken people that I may be the only Jesus they ever see. And I pray that my life reflects who He is.
Well, what a challenge. What a beautiful challenge to every listener. Because that's what it really is all about. It's his mission. You know, he came to seek and to save, and he still wants us representing him in that very endeavor. Thank you, Tanil. Thank you for sharing your life and thoughts and your passion and your burden with us. You know, it's kind of like what I was thinking when you were talking, Colossians 3:17, whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus. So whether it's church leadership or parenting in the home or being room mom room mother at the school party or going to work every single day, my my mission field is everywhere. It is not limited, and I need to show up. I need to have a voice. I need to use my influence for righteousness. I love that. Thank you so much. And to all of our listeners, I hope that you have been encouraged by today's conversation. And thank you for listening, being part of this conversation. And we do hope that you will share this episode with your friends, with your neighbors, with someone at work, because we want to get this word out. We don't want to just keep it to ourselves. We don't want to keep it just inside with just a few of us. We want everyone to hear some really great conversation today. And until next time, just know that Jesus loves you. And we are so honored to be walking in the faith with you. Thank you, Tanil, for being with us. God
Thank you
bless.
so much. God bless.